COVID-19, The Great Reset by Klaus Schwab and Thierry Mallory of Forum Publishing, published in June 2020. Digital Hawk. Digital Hawk holds and owns no copyrights to the reading of this material for educational purposes only in the hopes of Socratic anything. We are continuing on page 194. The small restaurants that survive the crisis will have to reinvent themselves entirely. In the meantime, in the cases of those that close their doors forever, the closure will impact not only the restaurant and its immediate staff, but also all the businesses that operate in its orbit: the suppliers, the farmers, and the truck drivers. At the other end of the size spectrum, some very large companies will fall victim to the same predicament as the very small ones. Airline companies, in particular, will face similar constraints in terms of consumer demand and social distancing rules. The 3 month shutdown has left carriers around the world with a cataclysmic situation of virtually zero revenues and the prospect of tens of thousands of job cuts. British Airways, for one, has announced that it will cut up to 30% of its current workforce of 42,000 employees. At the time of writing, mid June 2020, the restart may be just about to begin. It will prove extremely challenging, with a recovery expected to take years. The improvement will begin in leisure travel, with corporate level corporate travel to follow. However, as discussed in the next section, consumption habits may change permanently. If many businesses decide to travel less to reduce cost and to replace physical meetings by virtual ones whenever possible, the impact on the recovery and ultimate profitability of airlines may be dramatic and lasting. Prior to the pandemic, corporate travel accounted for 30% of airline volumes but 50% of revenues, thanks to higher priced seats and last minute bookings. In the future, this is set to change, making the profitability outcome of some individual airlines highly uncertain, and forcing the entire industry to reconsider the long term structure of the global aviation market. When assessing the ultimate effect on a particular industry, the complete chain of consequences needs to take into account what happens in adjacent industries, whose fate largely depends on what happens in the one upstream or at the top. To illustrate this, we take a brief look at three industries that entirely depend on the aviation sector: airports, infrastructure, and retail; planes, aerospace, and car rentals, automotive. Airports face the same challenges as airlines. The less people fly, the less they transit via airports. This in turn affects the level of consumption in the very shops and restaurants that make up the ecosystem of all international airports. In a post COVID 19 world involving longer waiting times, highly restricted or even no hand luggage, and other potentially inconvenient social distancing measures, could erode the consumer desire to travel by air for pleasure and leisure. Various trade associations warn that the implementation of social distancing policies would not only limit airport capacity to 20 to 40%, but would also likely render the whole experience so disagreeable as to become a deterrent, dramatically affecting About the lockdowns, airlines began to cancel or defer orders for new aircraft had to change their choice of particular model. In so doing, severely impacting the aerospace industry as a direct consequence and for the foreseeable future. The major civil aircraft assembly plants will operate at reduced capacity with cascading effects on the entirety of their value chain and supplier network. In the longer term, changes in demand by airline companies that reevaluate their needs will lead to a complete reassessment of the production of civilian aircraft. This makes the defense aerospace sector an exception and a relatively safe haven. For nation states, the uncertain geopolitical outlook makes it imperative to maintain orders and procurement, but cash constrained governments will demand better payments terms, like airports, car rental companies, depend almost entirely on aviation volumes. Hertz, a highly indebted company with a fleet of 700,000 cars overwhelmingly idle during lockdowns, filed for bankruptcy in May. Like for so many companies, COVID 19 proved to be the proverbial last straw. I keep reading. I gotta do something about cooking. Is it too early for pizza? Dummy. Don't call yourself a dummy. Well, if I am a dummy, I am a dummy. I'm a rubber dummy. I'm a rubber dummy. Just go be teaching you a rubber dummy. Crash test. Yeah, have a crash test. That's what I am. A human crash test dummy. Like, let me try this out. Let me see what this is all about. Crap, it broke my brain. Alright, how do we get out? How do we get out? Don't go down that level. Don't go crap, you went down the level. Alright, here's how you get out faster. Yeah, I guess that's what that's all about, right? Black and gray. Index industrial design. Hertz. Rental cars. Bread and butters. COVID-19. Investments. Um, I can't believe that. I can't believe it. It's just when it ties to your personal scenario, where the last and only car that I rented myself was from Hertz, and I got the Chevy GT-H, which is an anniversary edition of the Chevy GT-H. Well, the Chevy GT350, done for Hertz. So it's black with gold pinstripes, the two big stripes. Everything was on carbon fiber. Like the hood was carbon fiber, splitters, air foils. So I consider myself lucky. I'm sure you can buy them. I'm sure they're selling them or trying to at bars. Trying to. I need a manual. 196. 2.2.2. Behavioral changes. Permanent versus transient. This should be a doozy. Permanent versus transient changes. Effects on retail, real estate, and education. Some behavioral changes observed during the lockdowns are unlikely to be entirely reversed in the post pandemic era, and some may even be permanent. How exactly this will play out remains very uncertain. A few consumption patterns may revert to long term trend lines, comparable to air travel after 9/11, albeit at an altered pace. Others will undoubtedly accelerate, like online services. Some may be postponed, like buying a car, while new permanent patterns of consumption may emerge, like purchases associated with greener mobility. Much of this is still unknown. During the lockdowns, a lot of consumers were forced to learn to do things for themselves: bake their bread, cook from scratch, cut their own hair, etc., and felt the need to spend cautiously. How entrenched will these new habits and forms of do it yourself and auto consumption become in the post pandemic era? The same could apply to students who, in some countries, pay exorbitant fees for higher education after a trimester spent watching their professors on their screens. They will start questioning the high cost of education. Will they start questioning the high cost of education? To grasp the extreme complexity and uncertainty of this evolution in consumer behavior, let us revert to the example of online shopping versus in-person retail. Whoa. That thing was already falling, I felt like. With cascading effects on the entirety of their value chain and supplier network. In the longer term, changes in demand by airline companies. How exactly this will play out remains very uncertain. A few consumption patterns may revert to long-term trend lines, comparable to air travel for 9/11, albeit at an altered pace. Others will undoubtedly accelerate, like online services. Some may be postponed, like buying a car, while new permanent patterns of consumption may emerge, like purchases associated with greener mobility. Much of this is still unknown, page 197. During the lockdowns, a lot of consumers were forced to learn to do things for themselves: bake their bread, cook from scratch, cut their own hair, etc., and felt the need to spend cautiously. How entrenched will these new habits and forms of do it yourself and auto consumption become in the post pandemic era? The same could apply to students who, in some countries, pay exorbitant fees for higher education. After a trimester spent watching their professors on their screens, will they start questioning the high cost of education? To grasp the extreme complexity and uncertainty of this evolution in consumer behavior, Let us revert to the example of online shopping versus in person retail. As stated, it is very likely that bricks and mortar stores will lose out severely in favor of online shopping. Consumers may be willing to pay a bit extra to have heavy and bulky products like bottles and household goods delivered to them. Supermarket retail space will therefore shrink, coming to resemble convenience stores where shoppers go to buy relatively small quantities of specific food products. But it could also be the case that less money will be spent in restaurants, suggesting that in places where a high percentage of people's food budget traditionally went to restaurants, 60% in New York City, for example, these funds could be diverted to and benefit urban supermarkets. As city dwellers rediscover the pleasure of cooking at home, the same phenomenon may happen with the entertainment business. The pandemic may increase our anxiety about sitting in an enclosed space with complete strangers, and many people may decide that staying home to watch the latest movie or opera is the wisest option. Such a decision will benefit local markets to the detriment of bars and restaurants, although the option of online takeout meal delivery services could be a lifeline for the latter. There were numerous examples of this happening in an ad hoc fashion in cities across the world during lockdowns. Could it perhaps become an important element of some restaurants' new post COVID 19 business survival plan? There are other first round effects that are much easier to anticipate. Cleanliness is one of them. The pandemic will certainly heighten our focus on hygiene. A new obsession with cleanliness will particularly entail the creation of new forms of packaging. We will be encouraged not to touch the products we buy. Simple pleasures like smelling a melon or squeezing a fruit will be frowned upon and may even become a thing of the past. I touched all the bananas at 7-Eleven last night, or this morning, early this morning, really, really. A single attitudinal change will have many different ramifications, each having a particular effect on one specific industry, but in the end, impacting many different industries through ripple effects. The following figure illustrates this point for just one change: spending more time at home. Page 199 has figure 2: potential implications of spending more time at home. Working from home, flowchart. Working from home office spaces, traditional office spaces, refurbishment, equipment, commercial real estate, paint, carpentry, desks, printers, eating at home, takeaway, home cooking, delivery services, eating out, food delivery, e payments, entertainment, streaming, books, games, live, travel, business travel, personal travel, long distance commuting, tourism, air travel, mass transit. Tourism includes local tourism and long distance. Digital coordination, collaboration platforms, bandwidth, collaboration platforms, software. Source: Reeves Martin. Sensing and Shaping Post COVID Era. BCG Henderson Institute, the 3rd of April, 2020. BCG.com. The heated debate over whether or to what extent we will work remotely in the future and as a result spend more time at home has been taking place since the pandemic started. Some analysts argue that the fundamental appeal of cities, particularly the largest ones, as vibrant centers of economic activity, social life, and creativity will endure. Others fear that the coronavirus has triggered a fundamental shift in attitudes. They claim that COVID 19 has been an inflection point and predict that all around the world, urbanites of all ages who are confronted with the shortcomings of city pollution and undersized, overpriced accommodation will decide. Some analysts argue that the fundamental appeal of cities, particularly the largest ones, as vibrant centers of economic activity, social life, and creativity will endure. Others fear that the coronavirus has triggered a fundamental shift in attitudes. They claim that COVID 19 has been an inflection point and predict that all around the world, urbanites of all ages who are confronted with the shortcomings of city pollution and undersized, overpriced accommodation will decide to move to places with more greenery, more space, less pollution, and lower prices. It is too early to tell which camp will be proven right, but it is certain that even a relatively small percentage of people moving away from the biggest hubs like New York, Hong Kong, SAR, London, or Singapore would exercise an outsized effect on many diverse industries. Profits are always made at the margin. Nor is this reality more apparent than in the real estate industry, and in particular in commercial real estate. The commercial real estate industry is an essential driver of global growth. Its total market value exceeds that of all stocks and bonds combined globally. Prior to the pandemic crisis, it was already suffering from an excess of supply. If the emergency practice of working remotely becomes an established and widespread habit, It is hard to imagine what companies, if any, will absorb this oversupply by rushing to lease excess office space. Perhaps there will be few investment funds ready to do so, but they will be the exception, suggesting that commercial real estate still has much further to fall. The pandemic will do to commercial real estate what it has done to so many other issues, both macro and micro. It will accelerate and amplify the pre existing trend. The combination of an increase in the number of zombie companies, those that use debt to finance more debt and that have not generated enough cash over the past few years to cover their internet costs, going bankrupt, and an increase in the number of people working remotely means that there will be far fewer tenants to rent empty office buildings. Property developers, for the most part, highly leverage themselves, will then start experiencing a wave of bankruptcies, which the largest and systemically important ones having to be bailed out by their respective governments. In many prime cities around the world, property prices will therefore fall over a long period of time. Never fear, Guinevere, your money is here. Profits are always made at a margin. Commercial real estate industry is an essential driver of global growth. Its total market value exceeds that of all stocks. 10:10 as I look at the clock. Tuesday the 31st. The commercial real estate industry is an essential driver of global growth. Its total market value exceeds that of all stocks and bonds combined globally. Prior to the pandemic crisis, it was already suffering from an excess of supply. If the emergency practice of working remotely becomes an established and widespread habit, it is hard to imagine what companies, if any, will absorb this oversupply by rushing to lease excess office space. Perhaps there will be few investments funds ready to do so, but they will be the exception, suggesting that commercial real estate still has much further to fall. The pandemic will do to commercial real estate what it has done to so many other issues, both macro and micro. It will accelerate and amplify the pre existing trend. The combination of an increase in the number of zombie companies, those that use debt to finance more debt and have not generated enough cash over the past few years to, to cover their interest costs. Going bankrupt and an increase in the number of people working remotely means that there will be far fewer tenants to rent empty office buildings. Property developers, for the most part, highly leverage themselves, will then start experiencing a wave of bankruptcies, with the largest and systemically important ones having to be bailed out by their respective governments. In many prime cities around the world, property prices will therefore fall over a long period of time, puncturing the global real estate bubble that had been years in the making. To some extent, the same logic applies to residential real estate in large cities. If the trend of working remotely takes off, the combination of commuting not being a consideration any longer, and the absence of job growth means that the younger generation will no longer choose to afford um, residential renting or buying in expensive cities. Inevitably, prices will then fall. In addition, many will have realized that working from home is more climate friendly and less stressful than having to commute to an office. That's for sure. Okay. The possibility of working remotely means that the biggest hubs that have benefited from higher economic growth and other cities or regions in their vicinity may start losing workers to the next tier of rising cities. This phenomenon could in turn create a wave of rising star cities or regions, attracting people to look for a better quality of life thanks to more space at affordable prices. I'm going to continue using defines air, energy, and sun. Our book. You're going to finish this. This is yeah. I feel good. I have some food coming. I guess I just want to drive myself into a battle to be something other. I want to. I want to clean up so I can bring my. I want to make some art on t-shirts one way or another. I want to wear the messages. I got all the stuff. I just need to be pleased about my purview, which is nobody. I don't have to fix everything. Let's just get a reset, bare knuckle, like a bare minimum. Let's just do a bare minimum. Let's just bare minimum it. Get back to a little sense of order in the courtroom, and forget about the whole love thing. Yeah, it's a little bit harder. Some water droplets in your mouth. I always just try to like force everything. Yeah, force it on America, but actually on the planet. It doesn't impact you know, who's telecommuting when you're well. You still need computers, whatever businesses you're operating, whatever products you're using. That's one of my frustrations with all the. Of course, we knew this, we expected it, but it's really frustrating to have all the coolest like. I just bought all the coolest stuff from Apple, and it just wasn't. It hasn't been as pleasurable to aside from the environment around it, the signal strength. This positioning on the pond. That's the thing that some people don't feel really like that. But if they got delta wave, they wouldn't know to think. That's the thing. Alright, back to reality. Let's get this show. Let's get some sun. Very well then. Go to the judge. Yes, it looks like you have quite a few tickets here. Wow. What am I to think about this? I'll tell you what to think about it. I had a job to do at the office. I was going to pay you. It's all right. Thanks for letting me go along. I wasn't afraid. I like you. Okay. got this dragonflies and solar panels, laundry in the sun, race tire. TW's got the contents. Two good ones. Barely driven. Dragonflies like to fly on my penis. Things to let it compute. Back into the darkness. Dragonflies in my eye. So I dropped the Ferrari back in. And what did I Sunday? Sunday. Lots of coffees and fancy stuff. We were trying to drink the entire 5 or 6 ounces in one cup. When you don't. Notwithstanding all the above, perhaps the notion of widespread remote working became the norm is too far-fetched to happen in any meaningful manner. Haven't we so often heard that optimizing knowledge work? In reality, the simplest sector to go remote depends on carefully designed office environments. The technology industry that has resisted such a move for so long by massively investing in sophisticated campuses is now changing its mind in light of the lockdown experience. Twitter was the first company. So